Ladies and gentlemen, I am Mike E. Dangerously, and you're watching Shot of Nostalgia. Let's get extreme!
Welcome to the fourth episode of Shot of Nostalgia, where we continue our deep dive back into the history of wrestling and fully immerse ourselves in a timeline. We are continuing the journey through 1996 WCW to relive one of the most memorable years in wrestling history. As usual, joined by my co-host, Mike Belcaster. How you doing, man?
I'm beyond great. How are you doing, dude?
Doing well, man. We are back here on a Friday, another weekend, and this is my favorite part of the week, talking about WCW 1996. I've been chomping at the bit to talk about Super Brawl 6 with you. So much has happened between last Friday and tonight, so yeah, I'm so excited.
No, listen, 8 matches, packed card, packed show in general for Super Brawl 6. We're living the dream right now. We got some really cool stuff going on. It's amazing, and some historical moments to cover too. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it, but we're here. We're doing it, man.
Yeah, some of the stuff we'll obviously talk about stuff that you probably know about now. We're not going to break any news, break any doors down like we did with the Forbidden Door, like we did last week. But there is some famous things that happened this week, and you see the shirt. I'm rocking our farewell of Brian Pillman. We'll get into that. But this is the last we see of Brian Pillman in WCW. He will turn up in ECW and then eventually WWF. And what a year it was for Pillman. So we say farewell to our good friend, the Loose Cannon, but he will show up elsewhere. And I'm sure we'll see him somewhere down the line in our next journey into another year.
Yeah, 100%, man.
So just before we get started here, let's take care of some housekeeping. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Turnbuckle Tavern. We continue to give out hours of free content, and all those things go a long way. So like, subscribe, leave a review. If you leave a 5-star review, screenshot it, send it to myself or Mike Belcaster. We'll send you some stickers for free.
Yeah.
Just for free, right into your mailbox, and you guys can put them wherever you want. And it's encouraged. Put them wherever you want. Also, buy some shirts, dude.
Yeah.
We've got some good shirts. We have the official Pro Wrestling Tee store, Turnbuckle Tavern. We have the Shot of Nostalgia shirt with that purple that really pops. And of course, we have the Tavern Daddies. You got that picture of, I think it's Ricky Steamboat, Dustin Rhodes, and we also got the Brian Pillman himself in a picture with the two bad Chads. What a great shirt that is. And if you guys can't find what you want on the Pro Wrestling Tee store, head over to the Teespring store, turnbuckletavern.creator-spring, whatever. You see the link there. Go there. Type in turnbuckletavern.com. All your links are there. These are just two examples of the great shirts we have available. Buy some merch. Support the tavern. Support the show. Support your favorite host. And tip your bartenders, guys.
Absolutely, man. Most great companies got started as t-shirt companies, as we all know. So it's time to start hustling. I mean, look at this beautiful Turnbuckle Tavern t-shirt I'm rocking under the blazer tonight.
I made a huge order. It should be coming to my door soon. It was unfortunately not here in time for the show, but supporting all the shows across the tavern, whether it be our good friend Nick Storm, whether it be the classic logo we see on your chest. I got a sweatshirt coming my way, some Shot Nostalgia merch. I got paid last Friday, so it's time to buy some merch. And you guys should do the same. It's awesome.
You got that Turner money, brother. You're making it happen. That's what I like to hear.
So as you guys can see, we're still rocking the Blazers. I got some 90s chains on right now. So anytime we're going to be coming up with some new outfits as the weeks continue to pile on. We have 31 weeks of this year of 1996, so we're going to make the most of it. But let's get right into it, man. Today we're going to be reviewing the Super Brawl 6 pay-per-view from 1996, and of course, the following night, February 12th, episode of WCW Nitro. Each week, we will be reviewing 2 weeks of whatever show comes up, including a pay-per-view when they happen to approach. Our next pay-per-view will be WCW Uncensored, but we have a decent ways to go before we get there. Belcaster and I have freshly watched all of these episodes, and it is truly, as we always say, a shot of nostalgia. So we recommend that you follow along and watch along before we get to this week. If you have not watched it, maybe just pop it on the background as you're watching this. Put the WCW show on mute. You don't need to hear them. Hear us just talk about it, and you guys can probably hear us commentate about it in real time. It's not a watch along, but it's the next best thing, I would say.
Yeah, listen here. If you want me to do a Dusty Rhodes impression while we are sitting here doing the pay-per-view, Daddy, the Super Brawl 6, it's going to be a good time, okay? You don't need Steve Mongo McMichael in your ear. You got the best thing. You got Acefield Retro and good old Mike Belcaster. We're going to have a good time, Daddy.
So, I mean, we're going to get into the newsletter and we're going to dive deep into the WWF and WCW budding rivalry, but let's start off with the most important story here. And on February 11th, 1996, Flying Brian Pillman would begin his loose cannon gimmick during a World Championship Wrestling Super Brawl 6 pay-per-view event from Bayfront Arena in St. Petersburg, Florida. I almost said New Jersey. I don't know why I said New Jersey, but right outside Tampa. It's where the Rays play, so not quite Tampa. So the last match he ever wrestled for the promotion. Pillman was paired off with the head booker, Kevin Sullivan. We'll get through the results of that match in an I Respect You leather match, strap match, I should say. Similar to an I Quit match, the only way to win was to grab the microphone and utter those words, thus surrendering. So this match capped off a work shoot in which Pillman and Eric Bischoff planned for Pillman to go off the deep end, getting fired and heading to ECW to reinvent himself as a maniac. So about a minute into this match, with Sullivan, he simply stopped wrestling, grabbed the mic, and said, "I respect you," that classic video that you guys probably have seen before. Pillman then rolled out of the ring, walked out, and went to ECW, but the joke was on Bischoff because Pillman never came back, instead signing with World Wrestling Federation later that year as the loose cannon. So actually, Mike Belcaster, you were watching WCW at the time. They say, Meltzer says it in here, it is a work. But there's some rumor and innuendo that says that Pillman went to business for himself, and we see where he wound up. Where do you land on this?
When I was a kid, I was confused, but as now rewatching it, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's a work. I don't know if it's. I mean, they were definitely in business, and we see. And I don't want to spoil everything because we'll break that down when we get to it in the show, but. I don't know, man. They seemed like they were covering it up as best as they could, and something happened. And you can see Sullivan and Arn Anderson were exchanging words after the match. Kind of like it looked like it was like, oh, he left the building, man. I don't know, man. It could have very well been a shoot.
Similar to all the best works that people fall for, only a couple people are in on it. Bischoff, to this day, on 83 Weeks, will say that only him and Pillman knew about this. So everybody in the back thought it was an actual shoot. So, I mean, it could be revisionist history on Bischoff's part because he's embarrassed that Pillman had left. But Pillman could have been playing both sides. I mean, obviously, Pillman went and got paid. We talked about it before in the other episodes. He was the first guaranteed contract in wrestling history, believe it or not. So he paved the way for wrestlers today as we see millions of dollars, go into the bank accounts of all these wrestlers we love today. Pillman was the first guy to negotiate it to a point where the leverage was on the side of the wrestler. Yeah. And he created his own, and this is before the internet. So he created his own storyline across different promotions. He was truly a trailblazer.
100%. And rewatching this, I really felt it. At the time, I didn't notice it as much. But being what we call ourselves smart fans, if you will, watching this was not only some of Pillman's best work, but like he's working everybody here, and it works, and it's so organic. There's no fighting for it, and I loved every minute of it. And I'm so sad that this is the last we see him during this shot of nostalgia that we're going through, because he was this was some of his best stuff I think I've ever seen, and I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, Pillman really blurred the line of what was real and what was fake, and WCW did a really good job of that, and we will see more of that as 1996 progresses with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And what was reality definitely changed the wrestling landscape, and having works become borderline shoots, and you didn't know what was real and what wasn't, and that's when wrestling is its best, in my opinion, where it blurs the line. I mean, even today, compare it now with the Cody Rhodes stuff. We weren't sure what was real, what wasn't. We had conversations on the Turnbuckle Debate about whether or not Cody was just playing the fans. He just showed up back in AEW, or if it's still potentially work. I'm sure there's some people that fall in the camp of that he's working covertly for AEW and WWE. I mean, even have the people that are conspiracy theorists about the Montreal Screwjob and say that was the biggest work in history. I mean, if this could be a work where Pillman can do this, in a world where there are very few secrets, right? Because everyone talks to each other, everyone's whispering to each other, they're hanging out after the like how many. The thing is about that, it's almost like faking the moon landing. How there's so many people involved. How could it be? How could you trick enough people to make it still have this this lore about it that it's actually a work.
Yeah.
You know, so like if I feel like, going back to the Montreal Screwjob and the Pillman thing, comparing both of them, too many people are involved here. And I think it probably, in my opinion, started as Pillman and Bischoff working on their own, working the boys, working the people in the back, and also working the fans at home. But Pillman probably recognized that he had financial gain here, that he can go off and make more money. And it kind of fell apart for Bischoff. He put too much trust into the individual, and that's where it sort of fell off. But I think initially, Bischoff saw dollar signs of getting him back eventually, because as we see the progression of what the NWO angle became and what Hall and Nash as the outsiders, reality was what he had in mind for the program.
Oh, 1000%. And I think that Pillman was on the cusps of breaking those grounds. You know, he was doing so much good that I think there was no reason for Bischoff to doubt him. And as we've seen, he goes to ECW. He makes a huge story out of this, and first guaranteed contract in WWF. Unbelievable stuff for the business. Trailblazer is something that comes to mind for him, and very much a solid believability to where I wouldn't even bat an eye. And I think that you say that so many people are in on it, but I don't know, man. I think that they left a lot of people out of it, and that was just how it worked. And especially watching the finish of the match, I was like, man, these guys have no idea what's going on, and they were just trying to make fucking make a mountain out of a molehill, and I think they did a great job at doing it. It was wild.
And it's weird too, because the stop in ECW is so pivotal for Pillman, because 1996, the landscape of WWF wasn't ready for Brian Pillman. It wasn't until later in that year that they'd be ready, and eventually 1997 is where he took off, and he had the whole angle with Austin, and then being in the Hart Foundation. It was almost like perfectly planned by Pillman. I know people give him sort of the moniker of being the loose cannon. I think that's truly probably a piece of who he actually is, but I think he's smarter than a lot of people give him credit for, because he planned this out perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even going down to the gun promo in WWF, I think that he really had a solid game plan for what he wanted as not just a character, but an individual. And he made it work really well, to a point that everybody was waiting on the edge of their seats to see what was next. And he did a great job. He was everything you could possibly want out of a dramatic, out of a just over the top character. And man, I don't think I know gets his dues. He gets his flowers, as we like to say on the GCW show, but I don't think he ever gets his flowers, man. He is so underrated. To this day, I think he might be my favorite wrestler from this year.
Yeah, he opened the door for the Attitude Era, and then eventually Stone Cold kicked it in. But the door was cracked because of Pillman, and the exposure that eventually became, with all the reality-based storylines and Vince Russo taking to the next level. I mean, blurring the line is where you start to create sort of mystique again. Like wrestling, when people thought it was real, people would go to the shows and they would feel passionate about the characters. But now we see a different version of it today, where you're working on with social media. But this was the version of blurring the line. Like, I know that is a work, but this wasn't supposed to happen. And people left after Super Bowl VI saying, I don't know about that. He looked like he was actually angry. And we've seen moments like that. I mean, Montreal Screwjob. We've seen other things where people take matters into their own hands and they go off script. And I mean, maybe even the pipe bomb. People talk about the pipe bomb being a work or a shoot or whatever you want to say. I don't know. I mean, how much of what Punk said was reviewed with Vince behind the scenes? Like, that's what makes wrestling interesting. People really got behind the pipe bomb because they're like, yeah, they knew he was going to go out there and say things. They didn't know he was going to say that. So that's where the line becomes very, very, very blurry. But you know what? We talk about that all day, and I'm sure he's going to come up again in the newsletter. But let's move into happy hour and talk about the news from this week in 1996. Man, love
Dusty.
those bumpers. It's the best, man. Takes the show to the next level. Let's thank Chad Smith for that, man. You rock.
Always, man.
Yeah, always. I mean, the production level here in the Turnbuckle Tavern is, you can't compare it to any other wrestling podcast. Where else are you getting this stuff, man?
Yeah.
But let's dive into the newsletters immediately. February 1996, all across WCW. There are two new newsletters that I dug really deep through and found all the WCW nuggets of knowledge that you guys need to know. So let's go through the February 12th newsletter. And we keep talking about the WrestleMania 12 segment that they were planning with the Huckster and the Nacho Man, which eventually, and thank you to one of our, someone who commented on the video last week, that they did do it in the pre-show and it's now taken off the WrestleMania 12 broadcast. I wasn't watching WWF at the time. I was still a youngin'. So I did not even know that they actually did it until further research. And that's why we do this, man. I'm learning every time we do this.
Yeah.
So at this moment, they're planning for it. It's February. Obviously, WrestleMania would be in March. So it is now believed that WCW won't attempt to stop WWF from running the Huckster Macho Man match on WrestleMania by taking legal action because TBS and or Marvel Comics own the likeness to the Hogan, Savage, and Turner personas for marketing purposes. Unlike a TV parody, this is using the names for marketing when used on pay-per-view event. However, Titan apparently had geared up for what its audience in portraying itself as the underdog babyface is standing up to the billionaire's lawyers. Bischoff felt that filing legal action to block the match, even though they would probably win, would ultimately be playing into McMahon's hands. So we keep seeing this theme weaved in and out of 1996 with WWF. You have Vince McMahon, and I went back and listened to the Super Brawl 6 episode of 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff, and he talks about how frustrating it was to listen to Vince try to weave the narrative of the McMahon family enterprise being this like mom and pop shop, and this was homegrown, this is a family business, and this billionaire's trying to take what we've started to build from the ground up. It's just laughable because we know the history, we know what Vince is now and how big they are, and even then, how many territories did Vince put out in establishing the WWF as Titan as it is in 1996?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just, I wouldn't say it's petty, but it was kind of petty. You know, it was just like, oh, poor me. Nobody likes the person playing the victim, especially when you're taking jabs. So I think Vince was kind of in the wrong, but Bischoff, Bischoff wasn't always in the right either. Turner wasn't always in the right. So it's hard to throw stones in this giant glass auditorium that we're working in. But I mean, yeah, man, it's crazy that they got away with what they did. It's just mind blowing, especially retrospectively, because like we see stuff with lawyers, like a lawsuit's a sneeze away from anything these days. So with going back and like kind of re-witnessing this, it is wild that they were allowed to do the Nacho Man and the Huckster, you know.
It's weird to see Bischoff taking the high road here, and easily he could have been in the offensive in a lot of ways, especially with the campaign of acting like WCW is the only wrestling company to use steroids, and WWF is this clean act. Meanwhile, WrestleMania from 1 through wherever they're at 12 at this point, were on the backs of men who were on steroids who died early because of the steroid use, and Vince turned a blind eye. For him to now say it's all about family and he wants to make sure these athletes are okay, Bischoff had every right to be on the offensive, but he turned his cheek and he was ignoring the barbs for quite some time. Eventually, Bischoff would get fed up and he would take it to a new petty level, whether it be giving results live on air or challenging Vince to a fight and all that stuff. But at this time, whether it was Bischoff's call or Ted Turner or whoever in his ear was saying, just ignore them. And that's an interesting strategy because Vince turned up the heat again.
No, yeah. I mean, anybody that takes the high road has an honorability, if you will, and you just kind of got to respect it. But we do see a lot of jabs going back and forth after this, and this is just the beginning of it, if not, a push in the right direction down the river. So listen, kudos to Bischoff for taking the high road, or Turner, whoever did it first, or whoever was above it. It takes a lot to kind of not bat an eye at competition doing that to you. If there was another podcast out there called Sip of Nostalgia, I think we would kind of take that in a hard road, and there would be the Nacho Man Mike Belcaster and Huckster Ace Retro, man. So it's crazy to think about. But I much respect to Bischoff for taking the high road, man.
Agreed. I mean, he doesn't really take the high road anymore, as we saw. I mean, current day today, he's going after CM Punk on Twitter today. So I don't think he applies the 1996 mindset into 2022. But nevertheless, speaking of petty, the power had gone out during one of the Nitros. And according to WCW sources in the building, the power failure was the result of a construction foul up at the adjacent exhibit hall, which caused the power in the entire complex to go out. Bischoff, who on the air is at times as much of a loose cannon as Brian Pillman, when the show went back on, made insinuations that it was an act of sabotage in a heated wrestling war. While not mentioning anyone by name, he came back on air as the match was still in progress, saying almost sarcastically, "I wonder how that happened. And desperate people do desperate things." And later, "I like the competition. I love a good fight. If the fight isn't good, I don't belong being in it." This left McMahon furious because it was at least an insinuation of him being involved in something that was not only illegal, and his company had absolutely nothing to do with it, claiming Bischoff statements were really below the belt. Not that WCW was also majorly pissed off by the billionaire Ted skit that aired moments earlier. So Meltzer definitely siding with Turner a little bit here, but that just shows how deep the pettiness goes, that WCW, even if they didn't believe it, was insinuating that WWF had fiddled with the power in the arena to take it out. Like, that's how deep it is. Imagine that story now that like Tony Khan was coming out. And we had the bot story, don't get me wrong. That actually happened recently. But that he's cutting the power out when they're sharing the same town.
It's wild. But listen, the bots thing has
it has all the drippings of the Monday Night Wars. It really does. Like, you can see that being in the newsletter of 1996, right?
It's got a realness to it because there are a lot of bots on the internet that are just troll farms, retweet farms, you name it, share farms. Like, it's just we're accustomed to it now. Do I believe Vince was sitting there with a giant pair of hedge trimmers cutting the power wire for WCW? No, but I mean, good for Bischoff to make it interesting. That's what I look at. It made it more like, oh wow, Vince is really coming after these guys, and that's how I felt back then too. I was like, oh no, like WWF is coming after the WCW. Like, it was just as much as important as DX coming up in the tank, and saying we're here to take.
That's
over
revisionist history too by WWF. It's a little cart with like some branches on it. WWF has conditioned us to believe it's a tank.
It's a Jeep, it's a Jeep Wrangler with its painted green.
But you're right. But that's all sort of in the same bubble here. But let's touch more about the Pillman stuff. And this, we all know about the Kevin Sullivan stuff at Super Brawl. But before that, this was definitely an interesting tidbit that I didn't realize had happened. And maybe this is the long con between Bischoff and Pillman, but I want to read this to you. All this came just 20 minutes after one of the strangest live television matches in the recent history of pro wrestling. The match with Kevin Sullivan and Hugh Morris versus Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman fell apart at the seams and may finally be the straw that breaks the camel's back when it comes to Pillman's tenure in WCW. Early in the match, Pillman worked with Sullivan, and for some reason, Sullivan didn't sell a clothesline, and then Pillman immediately didn't sell a punch, and both immediately tagged out and were kept apart for several minutes. Several minutes later, when Pillman worked with Morris after a clumsy Morris clothesline in the corner, Pillman didn't stay down and instead started swinging, although he wasn't throwing hard punches, but it appeared Morris was confused by this unexpected twist. Looking confused and frustrated, he stormed off and tagged out. It appeared Sullivan and Pillman were doing a work shoot, so to speak, as it looked out of control, but you could see they were still working. Sullivan hung Pillman upside down in the corner and threw a knee in the corner, and at this point in the match, momentarily got out of control. Pillman didn't sell and got out of the corner, and it keeps going on throughout the match where they just play cat and mouse, not selling, enough for Meltzer to notice this in the newsletter. I mean, this kind of sides with more of a work, because they were like, if this was actually a shoot and they were fighting, and you even compare it to what went on with Charlotte, and I think it was Ronda, where people were saying that they were actually fighting in the ring.
Yeah.
This makes me believe, now that I read this, that what happened at Super Brawl was more of a work, because they both knew about it.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also see it as a business side of things. If you are a professional and somebody sends you that per your last email, and you're like, whoa, fuck this guy. Right? But you have to go along with it. So you're like, ooh. I feel like both of them were in a position, more so Kevin Sullivan, where he didn't want to risk his spot on the card. And even if it was a work or not, I feel like Kevin Sullivan was just protecting himself by kind of flowing back and forth, doing the tag out, not being in the same position as Pillman for a few, and like taking a breather. Wrestling crazy. I've seen some shit. So I don't know, man. Like, especially as somebody who's been, I've worked at the indies a few years. I've seen some pretty crazy stuff where I'm like, why didn't you kill him? And it was like, well, I don't want to lose my spot here. So I don't know, man. It could go either way still. We only have one side of the story to be told at this point in our lives. So I mean, it's crazy to think about, but I don't think Kevin Sullivan would be truthful in this day and age about it. So
yeah, and there's plenty of conversation about it. You can find Kevin Sullivan shooting on this. You can obviously hear Eric Bischoff's side. Unfortunately, we can't get Brian Pillman's take on it. Even if he was still around, I don't know if he'd ever be transparent, because that's just who he is. I feel like he's always working in some way. So
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, we all have to just dissect the facts we can have and watch and just sit here and have a conversation. I mean, we're having a conversation this many years later about it. So it obviously is still fascinating to many people, especially, the two of us right now.
Yeah.
So continuing the conversation about the Forbidden Door stuff that we talked about last week, in the newsletter, it says, we had heard reports about this, and they are apparently true, that New Japan will book almost all of its foreign talent through WCW from this point forward. The current tour, in which Malenko and Guerrero are the only foreigners, ends on February 25th at Sumo Hall. The following tour will be in March, with two major shows being on the 20th at the Tokyo Gymnasium. And they will all have Scott Norton, Hugh Morris, Wild Pegasus, which we know is Chris Benoit, and Harlem Heat, all of whom are WCW wrestlers. So it continues to go on. They talk about the Steiners, potentially different WCW talent. This just really makes me believe that we're living in some sort of simulation where things are repeating itself. This feels like today, where New Japan and AEW are working together, and I love it. I just love the idea of talent going in different places when they're not being used on their card. Just the fact that Malenko and Guerrero got the chance to go back to Japan after being there.
Yeah.
I just love it. I mean, I picked this out of the newsletter because it just felt very appropriate and very fun. And it just shows that Tony Khan he's not reinventing the wheel, but he's willing to be progressive in the way he thinks and like put his ego aside for the benefit of the wrestling fan, just like Bischoff was at this time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, I mean, even going to the recent news of Ibushi kind of tapping out of New Japan, like that could be a very well Brian Pillman-esque storyline for all we know. And who knows? Like, I you know what I'm very excited about? I love being worked. And it's hard to do when we're at our ages now and we've been through our years of fandom. And I give kudos to anybody who's trying to be progressive and try to make the whole bubble kind of one bubble and not a bunch of little bubbles inside of a bubble, because that doesn't do anybody anything. If you are working together with people, I feel like look at Burning Man, look at Lollapalooza. It's a bunch of different genres of music coming together and making a weekend, making a fest of it. Why not do that for wrestling once in a while? Why not make it okay for everybody to kind of enjoy it and buy more into it, become bigger fans of the product that we are so obsessed with?
Well, I think Vince McMahon, for someone who ridded the world of territories, is very territorial himself, where he doesn't want anybody else gaining any ground, because what made him so successful? It's a catch-22. What made him so successful was the fact that he's always in fight mode, where he doesn't want to let anybody in and be giving up any ground. But at the same time, when you're the big guy on campus and you're able to help others below you, it only helps the wrestling business. And it's cliche. We say it all the time. Rising tide lifts all ships. But it's so true, where a wrestling boom period doesn't only benefit the smaller company that possibly gets big. Say AEW gets super hot and they eventually rise to the level of WWE. That is good for WWE too, because there's not only competition, but eyes on product, where you have talent and you have people interested in wrestling. And I think trying to monopolize wrestling has created a down period in this misconception that, you have to like knock everybody off a peg. I think having the AEW and the New Japan and the Impact and the Ring of Honor and go down the list. AAA approach where talent is talent, and the best possible show is beneficial for not only the company but for the fans, and people come back for more. You're creating this market that you're saturating with good stuff, and people want to come back and experience that again. And then they may be so interested in wrestling, they're going to check out WWE too if they never were a fan of what you were doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just can't get behind the mindset, especially when no matter what, they're making millions of dollars, almost billions of dollars, to the point where even if they had a down year, like in 1995, when they're losing money, they're not going out of business. Like it's too big to fail now. So it's at the point where it's kind of like, put it on, cruise control, but why not help the smaller companies to get another boom period? It would only help WWE.
It absolutely would. And we're still seeing, like, I know a lot of people think the Impact AEW partnership's over just because they made an announcement on the dirt sheets, but Frankie Kazarian's going to Impact for the next pay-per-view. Like, what does that mean? Like, nobody's just doing that for shits and giggles. It's not like Frankie's like, I have stake at Impact, I got to go over there. Like, it's just good for business. It adds more to the lore of everything. And if you see people working together, you want to support the other guys that they're working with too. I want to buy a New Japan membership again. Haven't had one since before the Bucks and Cody and Kenny made AEW, but I'm back into it. I want to see more of it. And it's just like, you kind of balance all that in one situation. I think they're doing a great job with it. I think it's only adding more fandom to all of it. And how amazing would it be if WWE jumped in on it, because they never have before.
Right.
And it would be mind-blowing to everybody out there, and it would bring eyes to not just AEW, not just New Japan, but to wrestling in general. That's a newsworthy piece. Vince McMahon signs up to do a show with Tony Khan at the biggest stage of them all, and like, boom, it would be massive. It would blow everybody out of their fucking seats, man.
But even looking at, the theme from 1996 and all the way through 2022 is Vince is unwilling to budge on the notion of letting somebody else look on even playing field as them. So more on that later. Of course, we'll get there. Two more notes of this newsletter. We had a team meeting with WCW scheduled for February 7th. It is believed that the company was going to crack down more on drugs and or alcohol abuse, with the steroid situation at least no longer out of control. The real problem was with drugs in the industry, mostly prescription sedatives for whatever reason. And it appears the problem has gotten a lot worse over the past year, probably because the style has changed to where bigger bumps and greater risks are taken, and this business has already seen some devastating results. So, this is a small piece of the newsletter. This rears its head time and time again with guys with addiction problems and alcohol abuse and passing away way too early. We lose so many wrestlers past this time. Even some of the guys in this era where we're watching, Eddie Guerrero comes to mind specifically, but the list is endless. About the guys that their lives were cut too short, whether it was from steroids or some of the drug stuff here. I'm not sure if it's just sort of lip service or they're just sort of doing a PR thing with this, but it's nice to see they were trying. Obviously it didn't work because the prescription stuff was such a huge issue through the 90s and early 2000s with the wrestlers, but definitely it was on their radar. At least there's that. Listen,
it was Soma season. That was like anytime I've met a legend like that, we talk about shit like that. It was Soma season. Somas were in. Pills were easy to get away with because they were prescribed to you from your doctor or a doctor, not necessarily your primary physician. But it went a long way. It's heartbreaking too, because we've seen a lot of amazing talent fall under these circumstances throughout the years, especially our lifeline. And Eddie Guerrero should still be here. He was young as hell when he died.
Even a guy like Tess too. Tess comes to mind. Again, we can go up and down the list, but I think
absolutely.
the biggest thing we're seeing now is you were never going to solve that problem unless you fixed what was causing people to do that. And I think right now wrestlers are more concerned with keeping their bodies healthy, taking less bumps and putting bumps on their bump card. And also they're not working as many dates. You got a guy like Bryan Danielson who was working his ass off early on in Ring of Honor every weekend, busting his ass in these 45 to 50-minute matches, and now he works once every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's how you extend careers, and you can keep guys healthy, and they're less likely to use prescription drugs if they're not in excruciating pain every day of their life. So I think it's one hand washes the other. You're able to solve that problem by keeping the wrestler's health and safety first and having a mindset of not just squeezing every last drop out of them on house show circuits just to sell a ticket. You have the mind like, all right, let's keep Bryan Danielson healthy. Let's keep, Jon Moxley healthy. Like, Jon Moxley needs to leave for a few months to get healthy. We're going to pay for it. And he's not going to lose his spot like he wouldn't probably at this time.
Yeah.
It is a completely different approach, a cognitive switch. If you think about it that way. And I think it's solid. Not that it's not a problem anymore. I'm sure there is a problem, not to be naive about it, but I'm sure a lot of the wrestlers, and they speak to it, they are doing much better because they're working less dates, and they're picking and choosing where they want to work,
Yeah, absolutely. Not only that, but they have free range to discuss their matches and not do crazy shit all the time. And they're easing back on stuff like Bryan Danielson used to do the flying headbutt. He doesn't really do that much more. Like, he might pull it off once in a great while, but it's not like part of his normal repertoire. We see a lot of that with a lot of these guys, excluding Jeff Hardy and Darby Allin. I mean, but you're kind of seeing an awareness of what's good for us and what's not good for us. And before, it was just reckless intent. Cheap plug to the WWE record. But man. It's
sure. Like Darby Allin, and I went off on the AW wrap-up show last night about it, and I love watching Darby go, and like that's what makes Darby Darby. But I'm worried that his level of competitiveness with himself to raise the bar and do things that are a little bit more extreme than the last time he was out there, the bar becomes too high. And I think someone needs to sit him down and say, if you want to be doing this for an extended period of time and you want to be able to make money and retire and not be, God forbid, wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
It is, you have to kind of cool it a little bit. But they are the exception at this point. I would say that for everybody else, we watch some crazy GCW stuff, but even those guys are, they're not working as many dates. It's not so much about the moves being taken. It's the amount of dates. You cut them into fractions at this point. I think Bryan Danielson's working a 16th of what some of these guys in 1996 were working, the house show circuit. Every single night, all these guys had to be there. And the leverage now falls not so much. In 2022, the leverage falls with the competitors and the wrestlers. And back then, it was like, you're working or you're fired. So if you want to make your money, you better work the house show circuit.
No, for sure. And I think I brought up a good point yesterday, too, on the wrap-up when I was saying this might be the last we see of Darby for a few weeks, just because of what it is. Like, he might pop up and do a promo or something, but I don't see him working the pay-per-view. They're taking care of the talent that way. Like, he could come out and do these big spots once a month. It's not going to kill him. Like, he's got time to recover. He's got the right people in his ear to tell him what to do to recover. Medical institutions are way more advanced than they were in 1996. So, we see these guys, even like comedians like Bert Kreischer, who goes out there doing these comedy shows, getting loaded every week. Like, he's got an IV now, and like it helps him rehydrate and be okay and not be, puking and fucked up the night. But after he does a big event or a weekend after event, there's more of a health conscious conversation going around between everybody on all parties. It's not just pro wrestling, but it's sports, it's entertainment. Like, you could look at a Heath Ledger and say, there was an issue there with, narcotics, all this stuff. But like, I feel like we've learned from these mistakes that we're just trying to be better people, and that just it goes across all the boards. And that's like, I feel like there's enough talk going around to make it an awareness thing. And it's just like mental health, everything. Like, we're all in on everybody being okay now.
Yeah.
As opposed, it was like, oh, you can't talk about that because it's, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like there is an awareness state of mind going on now to where it's okay to do crazier stuff, but like, take it easy afterwards, ease up, pick and choose your spots. It's much like wrestling,
Yeah. And Darby, like you said, Darby he goes out there and, you may be shifting my mind a little bit here about he will have some time to rest. But like I'm thinking about Darby and say, early 2000s or working that Ruthless Aggression era, doing all those spots because he would be who he is. But even in the 90s, like he'd work that match on Wednesday and Thursday he'd be in Tahoma doing the same match with somebody else for a live audience, not even on TV. And I think that's where the damage is done. I mean, Darby
and then Friday for Rampage, and then Saturday for Nevada, and then Sunday for Tahito. It just keeps going and going.
It goes on and on and on.
Yeah,
and that's when the things start to be an issue. But moving on the newsletter, I thought this was interesting as well. WCW, we talked about Eric Bischoff taking the high road a little bit. This was petty, in my opinion. They were showing clips of Vinny Vegas getting pounded during bumpers on Saturday night Saturday night WCW. So Vinny Vegas, obviously we know him to be Diesel, who was one of the main eventers at the time. It would be interesting to see that he'd be coming over eventually, but they are taking some shots about, he used to work here and he was a jobber. So we don't really see that. I mean, like you would think, even with the pettiness of AEW and WWE, like it exists more of a subliminal way.
Yeah,
but it's not like AEW would be showing Cody Rhodes losing, or if someone moves over, like, I mean, John Moxley, they would show him losing as Dean Ambrose on TV. Like, I don't know. I can't picture it happening, but this was super petty in my opinion.
Yeah. Another good thing that like we've evolved from, I feel like there's more respect for the talent nowadays than there was back then. And it wasn't like, I don't blame them for throwing up, that, you got Vinny Vegas out there. Like it is what it is. And Vinny Vegas was a shitty gimmick in a bad time. So like, whatever, it is what it is. And like, as we've seen, Diesel, Kevin Nash, they kind of mend their ways and make bigger things from here on out. So who knows? Maybe it was part of the plan.
True. And this is the first mention we see at the end of the newsletter. This is what it says about Diesel and Razor Ramon. There is very much talk and or concern that either or both Diesel and Razor Ramon may go to WCW after their contracts expire. It was just left as a one-line thing, just a passing through. We know what happens with it, but that is the February 12th newsletter. So you ready to move into the February 19th one?
Oh, I am so ready.
All right, so let's continue the conversation through the newsletter. So the next week, Meltzer came out with a newsletter February 19th. So remember, this is right after the Super Brawl 6 pay-per-view, so the results are already in. And this is one of the main things I want to talk about again. It's the comparison between WCW and WWF. And it says, the main difference between the two, according to McMahon, is that unlike WCW today, he claims he never wanted to put his competitors out of business, only to expand his own company nationally, and that he expanded using his own money, and he had to run a profitable enterprise to survive, whereas WCW has been able to survive and fight a war with little regard to turning a true profit. He claims the regional offices put themselves out of business in the late 80s because they also tried to expand, and they were second and third and fourth ones who tried. So by this point, Titan was a national success rather than concentrating on competing with their regional territory where they had established roots. So this continues on and on. Vince trying to establish himself as their dog in the story, which is so laughable.
Yeah.
He went out, and you could talk to many. I mean, you listen to shoot interviews or just what WWE did to the wrestling business, good or bad.
Yeah.
Completely changed. It was a scorched earth approach where they completely destroyed everybody in its wake. And McMahon now wants to rewrite history. And I know the winners do get the ability to write the history in the textbooks, but Vince McMahon, I mean, we see through this. There's no way anyone buys this.
No, and I mean, come on. We're here. Not to break kayfabe from the 1996 era, but I mean, we're here. Vince obviously became the king in his own kingdom. And from 2001 when he bought WCW to showing up on Nitro with Shane, like it became his ballpark. And yeah, man, I mean, history writes itself, right? So we see what happened. It's wild, man.
So continuing, McMahon claimed the billionaire Ted skits are part of his own plan to call as much attention as possible to both his wrestling audience and the stockholders of both Turner Broadcasting and Time Warner about the actions of WCW. He said, and this is paraphrasing because I don't want to read the whole thing, that essentially that his perception and his presentation of WCW was more to raise awareness that they're being targeted. It's just like, dude, like the spin of Vince McMahon and the balls on the man, the grapefruits, dare I say.
Testicular fortitude.
So, yeah, this continues, and he talks about how it's not fair that they go head-to-head. He's essentially, I mean, Vince McMahon, a guy who no-sells everything.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to not show a brave face in a situation, is completely selling to Eric Bischoff and whining like a baby. This is not the Vince McMahon we know today.
No, free grapefruits, post, having the pride, I guess, to not go to this level. Like, even when TNA was on Monday nights, we didn't see any kind of like, well, that B team's on Mondays. They're hurting our brand. They're hurting our stuff. Like, it's wild to see Vince kind of in this cowarding position, because the Vince we know is, big shoulders strutting down the aisle, and it's just weird, man. And it's a almost like a cop out. Like, he just doesn't want to be like, oh, well, hey, we're doing our best over here. It's like, it's like poor me.
There's some mom and pop shop on Main Street, just like 2 employees. Come on now.
Yeah.
McMahon continued in an interview complaining of contract tampering, which is hilarious now, bringing up specific Diesel, the Bushwhackers, and John Pierre Lafitte. He claims Diesel was offered a 3-year deal by an intermediary from all sources that has basically confirmed that Hogan wants to bring him as a heel to work a program with him, but not as an official representative of WCW. McMahon told others and Diesel that he also claimed to those in the dressing room that they are offering him $750,000 per, and the most expect him to take it when the Titan contract expires in April. I think truly what's on Vince's mind, and he sees the writing on the wall, a lot of these guys are fleeing for the guaranteed money that we talked about. Pillman getting his guaranteed money, but everybody else is getting money from a bigger source, and the ability to get guaranteed money changes the game. It's not based on dates made. It's not based on anything. We talked about less dates being put on your calendar. It's a no-brainer for Diesel and Razor, no matter what. Like, why would you not take the deal? Creative aside, it sets your family up for life.
Yeah, listen, we've heard interviews with Razor and Diesel where they were pleading with Vince, hey, if you can give us this contract, this money, we'll stay. These dates, we'll stay. We don't want to leave, but it's too good to be sitting around waiting for it. And it really came to fruition. Like, you see what the future holds, and money talks, less dates talks more. You got time to be with your family. You got time to stay at home. You got time to recover. You got time to kind of enjoy your earnings. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of temptation there in a good way, but poor execution maybe. Yeah. But it was there.
Yeah. McMahon claims that the money being offered as the word has gone through his dressing room along with easier work schedule has hurt morale. Boo-hoo.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. So he continues to talk about Lex Luger and about all that stuff. He's threatening legal action. And he had said categorically he is not going to offer guaranteed contracts. He's admitted he's in a position where he's going to constantly have to create new stars, whereas WCW will be in a position of waiting for Titan or other companies to create stars and trying to pick them off. So even in 1996, Vince McMahon has the inability to make a new star, right?
Yeah.
And then keep that said star and pay that star.
That's true.
So history does repeat itself. We see established stars show up in AEW at all times, right?
Yeah.
And vice versa. You know, look at Cody Rhodes and his stock. He was not that Cody Rhodes when he left WWE. He came back all nice and shiny for Vince. So you want to talk about turnarounds fair play. Here you go.
Yeah. And as Cody says, if Vince said, we're buying it because it works.
Yep.
Nobody's. I mean, it's the roles are almost reversed at this point from a Turner Media to a WCW or WWF. I mean, it's pretty crazy to see. But yeah, I think that it's all. You say that they had a trouble playing or making stars, but it only takes one. You know what I mean? And it's not the guy that you're pulling from A or B. They really have to find that star in both companies. I mean, we see a lot of great talent going in and out, but both are really lacking a massive star power, like a Steve Austin, a Rock, a Hogan. It's just not the time for it yet, I don't think. And we'll catch it when it catches.
Yeah.
Like that's just as useful as catching lightning in a bottle. We can get the best program ever, but you need that one person that's going to push it over to the edge where people are like, we have to watch this, and you have to experience it live. You know, but it's a different day and age too. I don't know if that's the answer.
Yeah, both companies right now are team efforts. It seems they're kind of a superstar by conglomerate. It's not that one guy pulling the ship. I mean, you can say Roman is, I guess. I mean, that's the biggest comparison you can make, but not even.
Yeah.
And I was reading an article about WWE, and someone was saying, why can't they make new stars? And someone had argued it's intentional. The star now is the brand, and they don't want any star becoming bigger than the brand because they just leave. He's been burned by The Rock, not burned, but no, you can argue that The Rock's done more for wrestling than WWE's done for wrestling because he made it mainstream. But that's the idea of eventually a star gets too big and they eventually leave. But that's a whole conversation for another time. I want to get into the Pillman stuff because this is the part of the newsletter that's very, very interesting. So, and this is all from Meltzer's perspective, and this is written pretty much a couple days after it actually happened in real time. So it says the strange turn of events at Super Bowl VI on February 11th in St. Petersburg at the Bayfront Center Arena ended with Brian Pillman apparently out of WCW and Elizabeth turning on Randy Savage and costing him the WCW title in his match with Ric Flair. The latter was definitely the result of a well-booked surprise finish. The former was something else indeed. It was either the most highly calculated and hard to logically explain ruse in recent history of pro wrestling or the end of Pillman in WCW. During the week within the company, the majority viewpoint was that the incident between Pillman and Kevin Sullivan and the announcing by Eric Bischoff was not a planned angle. Pillman, who had in the last month almost become legendary for either erratic behavior or being in his wrestling character 24 hours a day, or both, had frequently arrived late for shows. On the Nitro prior to the Clash in Vegas, Pillman disappeared and several in WCW were apparently scared he was going to show up as a surprise of the live WWF Raw show in Stockton, California, about an hour away. 1 hour flight away, I should say. The next Nitro saw Pillman in a tag match with Arn Anderson against Kevin Sullivan and Hugh Morris have a stinker of a match due to what at least appeared to be a total lack of communication and had a few seconds of what appeared to be a shooting. Many in the company felt Pillman, who stormed out of Lakeland after a backstage argument with Sullivan, was through with the company. However, he showed up late again the next day for the Universal Studio tapings. The next day, while Bischoff was having a meeting with the wrestlers, Pillman mouthed it off, and the two had words with Bischoff saying that Pillman was very lucky he was still employed and had strongly hinted, as he had on television, that probably wouldn't be for long. So this continues down and down. I'm going to get to the spot in the Booker Man moment. But just there, they're not only working on the screen, they're working behind the scenes because they're not sure who's behind there that's going to be reporting to the newsletter, which one of the boys are going to catch on to this. It goes much deeper than just what's on the television screen.
Yeah, it's very interesting to a point where I still don't know if it really was a work or a shoot. And I mean, Bischoff could say whatever he wants now. Kevin Sullivan could say whatever he wants, but it feels just from you reading this, from us watching these shows, there was a little animosity there, especially in those last two shows. It was like a lot of like, what the hell's going on? Even going back to when he grabbed Heenan by the shoulders, and Heenan storms off as like, I wouldn't say it was the loose cannon character. I just think it was more of like just shit happening. It feels organic to me.
Yeah.
And this is I call me the biggest mark in the world. I don't care. I think there's something to be said about it. And it's, if it's a shoot, it's a shoot. But if it's a work, this is a really, really good work.
Yeah, so it stood the test of time because we're still talking about it. But to continue the perception here, Pillman was kept apart from all the wrestlers, supposedly because there was so much heat between himself and Booker Sullivan and dressed in a different trailer. Sometime around the time of Pillman's argument with Bischoff in the dressing room after the Sullivan match, Disco Inferno was the only wrestler to openly question things, suddenly saying something to the effect of, they're working the boys. If it was a work, it was the most elaborate one in recent memory, as few of any wrestlers knew. The referees in the ring had no idea. Meltzer does note that Jimmy Jett, at least seeming to have no clue what Pillman was doing during the entire minute, where he was like, trying his best to wrangle with Kevin Sullivan, and you could see the ref's panic in his eyes. I have to go back and check it out. Several things were implemented later in the show, such as Luger taking forever to get into the ring during the tag match. to kill time because the show will be running short. Perhaps the work will be so elaborate that Pillman will be fired as an angle, either that or he'll simply be fired in real life. Clearly, if all of this, he isn't fired, it has to be a work because there's too many different things in a 2-week period. But if it is a work, they'd know that and have to fire him anyway and continue to work. So this is like the Hogan tweet all over again. Like, you work yourself into a work, you work yourself into a shoot, brother, whatever it is. But
yeah,
man, we will talk about the Kevin Sullivan match, but goddamn, Pillman was a genius, man, and a great worker. Yeah. So many beautiful matches in WCW. You know, whether it's against Liger or Tom Zank or Arn Anderson or when he teamed with Austin, this might be his most memorable moment. And just the character work was just flawless. I mean, unless it was just like him actually losing his mind. I don't know what it is, and it's crazy to me.
Yeah, no, listen, this, whatever you call this, work, shoot, just craziness. I feel like this little stint, just since we started doing Shot of Nostalgia, has outshined every memory I've had of Pillman. He's been phenomenal here. And the look of panic in the referee's eyes, I seen it as I was watching it, because I watched it again this morning before we came back on here, just to make sure I had everything down to the T. It felt like a shoot, man, and it was great, and I loved every minute of it. And I hope it wasn't. I hope it doesn't work, because I'll be happy that I'm still that gullible to fall for it, man.
Yeah, so I mean, not to move too far away in history, but I did some, to make sure we have the timeline right. When he left WCW, made it to ECW, apparently he had a great relationship with Heyman, and then from their early WCW Dangerous Alliance days, they kept that relationship going on throughout ECW. So Pillman continued his wild promos. He was still in great shape. And the bottom line, man, he just could work. And anybody, anywhere, anytime, he's able to have a good match and the highlight of the card. So I think he was red hot when he came into WWF, and momentum, that you can't quantify momentum. It's something that comes along organically. You talked about that.
Yeah.
And I think if we don't see that terrible car wreck where his ankle gets shattered and becomes unusable, we're talking about something completely different. Maybe he's the guy who takes the next step in the 1998. And maybe, I mean, it's hard to deny Austin, and everything is sort of a butterfly effect off of each other. But yeah, Pillman seems like he was destined to be that next skyrocket guy, especially too. They both had such a very similar style where they both could have caught on and almost had a 1A, 1B in WWF at the time. Man, I just like something to fantasy book.
Could you imagine Pillman versus Austin WrestleMania 17? It could have been there. It easily could have been there.
Where does everybody else wind up? Does maybe The Rock doesn't get his opportunity if you don't need another guy? It's just insane to start pulling the thread.
No, absolutely. It's too much to handle.
Yeah, it is too much to handle.
Too hot to handle, too cold to hold, brother.
That brings us to our the end of the newsletters. I hope you guys enjoyed that, but it takes me a bit to get through them, but I feel like it's so worth it because it really puts us in the moment.
That's my favorite part of the whole thing. Like, I'm in Caps in 1996 right now. I want to go get my Ecto Cooler. I want to grab my Gushers. I just want to sit down and listen to you read the newsletter all day long.
And you guys gather around, sit, crisscross applesauce on the carpet. I'll read you guys the newsletter anytime you want. That's going to be the Patreon. I'm just going to be reading the newsletter to you guys.
I love it. Yeah.
So it's time right now. We're going to be reviewing Super Bowl VI and the week after of Nitro in our segment called Get Your Fix. All right, so we're in Get You Fix now. Hopefully you guys got a nice buzz from Happy Hour. We are talking about, first of all, Super Bowl VI, which took place February 11th, 1996 in St. Petersburg, Florida. Got that right this time at the Bayfront Arena. So I'm going to pop up the little banner here. You guys can get the results. If you'd like to read ahead of us, we will, again, make sure you guys immerse yourself into this timeline. I'll tell you guys the current WCW champions as followed and when they won them. So right now, our WCW World Champion is Randy Savage. He won it on January 22nd, 1996. Our U.S. Champion is Conan, who won it on the 29th of January. Our tag champs are still Sting and Lex Luger, who won on the 22nd of 1996. And finally, we have Johnny B. Bad. This is him circling the drain of his WCW run. We will definitely talk about that as television champion. We have not seen a lot of Johnny B. Bad, but we'll get into him.
Yeah, nor do we.
He is certainly going to be a topic of the newsletter, and listening to this, I believe it was the episode about Uncensored or something. I'm all over the place. I'm doing my research with reading The Death of WCW by Brian Alvarez. I'm listening to Eric Bischoff.
Ooh.
I'm really in 1996 WCW, but he does talk about Johnny B. Bad wanting more money, wants to become a star, and Eric Bischoff's like, fuck it, go, man. Like, you think we're trying to do? Like, we're trying to make you a star. You're not getting over. But anyway,
it worked out great for him.
Exactly. I mean, his wife got over, so that works for him.
Both ways of one. Yeah. Moving on.
So we're on commentary of Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, Dusty Rhodes. So great commentary team. And I just want to note what I wrote in my notes here. The difference between the presentation of Nitro and the pay-per-views are significant to me. The pay-per-view was like, all right, we gave you the appetizer. Here's the main event. Here is full dinner, complete with all the trimmings. You get a little bit of, soup and salad as well. This feels like a big deal. And it was this is the first time we're watching a pay-per-view here on Shot Nostalgia. And it feels a lot different than Nitro. Even though Nitro is very enjoyable, this felt like, all right, this is where the big boys are coming to play.
Yeah, no, I mean, just from the commentary alone, I mean, you got Heenan, you got Tony Schiavone, and sweet Suffering Sarsaparilla. You got Dusty Rhodes on the mic, daddy, talking all things. It's good. It feels more complete, if you will. God bless Mongo. He does a great job, but it's just not the same. You bring in Dusty and Heenan. It's beautiful. I love it, man.
So this opening match, and I think it was a good opening match, the Nasty Boys defeating Public Enemy in a street fight. And this is the way you should have used Public Enemy from the beginning.
Yeah.
The two of these guys went out there and they had a really good match. A lot of cool spots here. Match went 7 minutes and 52 seconds. Felt like it was the perfect amount of time. A lot of cool, table spots. You got chair spots. This was the perfect way to use those guys. Trash cans. This was like, if you have the Nasty Boys, if you have Public Enemy, why would you ever do anything that's not this? I mean, we saw DQ finishes with them. Just every time they're out there, it should just be absolute chaos. And this was that. It reminded me of the Darby Sting formula where they have those fun party matches. This was a party match to get the crowd on their feet, and people were into this.
Yeah, no, I mean, Dusty was awesome on commentary, too. He's like, he hit him with the Rubbermaid, even though the other guy's got the real steel trash can, man. Yep. I was popping all over the place. This was, I wrote it down. It was a clusterfuck in the funnest way possible. And I loved, I think it was Heenan. He's like, it's not a street fight. They're at the merch booth. It's a merch fight. Like, it was fun. It was good. Listen, you got Nasty Boys going over for the win. It looked great. It was a fun finish, man. I thought it was really, really good. It was a good way to kick off a pay-per-view.
Yeah, this wasn't quite the 1994 Nasty Boys that were used to like hitting Cactus Jack in the face with a shovel.
Yeah,
but this was certainly violent for what we expect from these guys here, and it fit, I guess, the narrative what 1996 WCW aesthetic would be.
Yeah,
it was lots of fun. Rocco and through 3 tables in 3 different spots. That was cool. I loved the match. It was a good opener.
Yeah, absolutely. For its time, it was revolutionary for an Extreme Rules match, if you will. I thought it was a good time.
So the following match we have here is the WCW World Television Championship with the aforementioned Johnny B. Bad with Kimberly defeating Diamond Dallas Page. So the stipulations are simple. If DDP wins, he gets a television title, and or if Johnny wins, he gets $6.6 million that Page basically stole from Kimberly, aka Diamond Doll. So that's a stipulation on the line. A lot on the line if you think about it. But,
yeah,
fans really couldn't get into it. Crowd was not really into it. This was not the Diamond Dallas Page that we have come to know and love. He still was sort of finding his way, a little bit awkward and fine of his character work. Didn't quite know who he was yet. You saw spurts of it. 14 minutes, 59 seconds. Saw Johnny B. Bad getting the win here. What were your thoughts on this match?
It was decent. I didn't think anything. I was laughing my ass off with the big giant check, though, that just said cash on it for $6.6 million, because anybody's got that sitting in a vault somewhere, and it's $6.6 million in 1996. That's got to be like $20 million now.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
like it's a ridiculous number. They could have said it's a $1 million. It would have been fine, you know. And I think it's more believable. This is like Ted Turner on a pole match. Like, this is just fucking wild. But listen, we got a young DDP, still kind of like you said, finding his mold. He looked good. I also loved Kimberly coming out with Johnny B. Bad. She couldn't get the confetti cannon going right away, and she was like,
yeah.
and then she squeezes the trigger and it's like, boom, all this shit goes in the crowd. It's the frisbees. Johnny B. Bad with the frisbees. Like, what are you guys doing? This is when Mean Gene's doing an interview segment. This should not have been on a pay-per-view. It was just wild, man.
Johnny B. Bad's sunset flip, I got to give him some credit for that. Looked really good.
It did.
His athleticism, I mean, but we've seen wrestlers come and go with athleticism. It doesn't mean you have charisma, and I think there's a huge distinction there. Mark Marrow, Johnny B. Bad, whoever he is, just never did it for me. Yeah. And he was one of those guys that's like turn the channel heat, whether it's WCW here or when he's in WWF as Mark Marrow. It just never clicked for me. And I mean, same can be said with everybody else. He's just not, I don't know. He doesn't jump out of the screen for me.
No, Johnny does be bad.
Johnny
absolutely terrible.
Johnny very bad.
Yeah, he had no like there's no I care about this whatsoever when he's on the screen. DDP almost at the same level because he wasn't the DDP, like you said, he's not the DDP with the taped ribs and the blue jeans coming out the Nirvana, yo, bro. It wasn't just there yet, but I mean, Page was definitely the better looking talent of the match, and they booked it wrong, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you see spurts of the People's Champion in there somewhere, but you have to
twinkle
really
in his eye, bro. It's there. He just ain't ready. He didn't invent the yoga yet. He's just not doing it.
There were some spots in this match that were okay. It certainly wasn't the worst thing we've seen thus far in our shot of nostalgia and our short run so far. But you know, what we would see eventually come from DDP, I don't think I would have seen it at this moment. I mean, I'm looking closely. It was hard to see, and good for him. I mean, he really became, he molded that coal into a diamond right here. He was coal Page here, not quite DDP Diamond Dallas Page yet, but
as his music would say, self high five, bro.
So our next match here, we have the WCW World Tag Team Champions Sting and Lex Luger defeating Harlem Heat. This is a rematch after Luger nailed Booker T with a roll of silver quarters or silver dollars to win the tag titles 3 weeks ago. Of course, Sting didn't see any of this. Luger playing the heel while Sting is being the naive tag partner. This was a really good match.
I loved it.
Like, I thought it was fun. It didn't get good ratings on the Wrestling Observer. When I look back at the newsletter, I think Dave gave it a 1.5 stars, which was bad. I mean, he gave Johnny B. Bad and DDP 3 stars. So this, I mean, I don't know. He was pretty hard on the match. Went 11 minutes and 49 seconds. Maybe it's just going back and looking at these two teams. They're, Hall of Famers. Two of the best tag teams that have existed in WCW history. I mean, Harlem Heat in a league of their own. Sting and Luger, so fun to watch. I'm loving this run with the tag titles. This feels a lot like AEW's tag division, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. And I can't believe he gave that such a low rating. I think this was one of my favorite tag matches that we've seen since we started doing the show. I know it's a very one-sided contest against Luger. They were working a very strong tag team style. Harlem Heat was. They kept Luger in their corner. Every time they were going for a tag, they pulled him away. We didn't see Sting get in there until later in the match. It felt really good. It was a really fun tag match that showcased one of the biggest tag teams at the time, which was Harlem Heat. I don't think Harlem Heat gets their due, even though they are Hall of Fame. They were such an underrated tag team, man. So good in the ring together.
Yeah, the criticism that Meltzer had on this match was mostly with the selling and the sympathy garnered from Lex Luger or lack thereof.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, I know he's reviewing it in real time, but watching this back, I mean, give Lex a little bit of a break here. It's 1996. Like, it's not like people are earning Oscars here. I mean, we see the Dungeon and Doom on the same card. So, like, what are we really judging Lex Luger's acting skills here? I thought it was fun for what it was. And the tag titles feel important. And I think that's a huge distinction that I'm getting from WCW when, if you're watching WWF at the time, 1996, tag titles feel like a second thought.
Yeah.
This feels like it's on the same par as the main eventers. I mean, look at two guys holding it, two world title contenders, and eventually Booker T would become world champion himself.
Yeah.
I definitely loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it was one of my favorite tag matches I think we've seen this year.
I've loved the tag division so far. I mean, even outside of the tag title picture, I mean, we talked about the Nasty Boys and Public Enemy.
Yeah.
You know, there is a mid card of the tag division, and the tag divisions are at their best when there's depth. And WCW has a deep tag division here. And I think we're only going to see more great tag action. Of course, we have LOD getting involved too. So they're involved in this as well. So we're going to see more of LOD and potentially coming and getting Harlem Heat and getting involved with Sting and Luger. So as you say, I'm here for it, man.
Listen, they cost Harlem Heat the match. He hit him with the lead, damn it. Like it was crazy. So I mean, it just builds good story. And I like, as you said, as I say, I'm here for it, man.
So WCW US Heavyweight Championship is next. We have Conan defeating One Man Gang. So this begins the pattern of WCW using the US title as a bartering chip to international stars. So I've noticed a trend here, and the newsletter mentions it, that the US title goes on guys that travel to different promotions. And Conan, who's traveling to AAA, is the champion here. This was not a great match, and it's not for Conan's lack of trying. One Man Gang just didn't have it here. But I love this version of Conan, and
me too.
I didn't get to experience this. I only know the Conan from the Filthy Animals. So seeing this side of Conan, which is borderline mid-card to main event level guy, I didn't see that, and I never understood why people were so high on Conan. I'm seeing it now. I feel like he has a really good look. His moveset's really good. I was impressed with him. The match wasn't good, but it's not Conan's fault. It's One Man Gang's fault. You can't make, chicken salad out of chicken shit. So this is sort of Conan's, he gets the title. But you know what?
Yeah.
It just gets it off of One Man Gang,
Well, I mean, I wrote it down in my notes. Match, but Conan looked like $1 million.
Well, Conan actually retained. My bad. I didn't he did take it off One Man Gang at one point. This was a rematch. Yeah. So
yes. Yeah. We were talking before. We don't know how Conan got the title, but he got the title.
Also, I mean, I guess this counts as him getting the win over One Man Gang, who was champion as well.
Yeah, so. But I mean, Conan looked great. He looked very well in shape. He looked like I said, he looked like $1 million out there. And I understand why they kept him around for so long as they did. It's because he's got the look, he's got the feel, his charisma, character, moveset. He would just look great out there. One Man Gang, not so much.
Yeah, and Conan bridging the gap with the Mexican audience and also Mexican promotions is a huge deal as well, where you're lifting an olive branch, where your championship is going on a guy who is not full-time in AAA. At this point, he's pretty much full-time in WCW, but he has his AAA in his tights. He is promoting their brand. It reminds me a lot of the Impact Championships being on AEW. It feels like that as well. Yeah,
and right before this, he was on Spanish commentary for the pay-per-view, which is great. Like, how do you not win over an audience like that?
Absolutely.
You got an international flow. I love it.
That's a really big thing, too, with WCW that we see intertwined. There is a variety of different types of people, whether it's body types or nationalities.
Yeah.
They have an eclectic mix of different types of people. I mean, you go up and down the roster, there's not one archetype of what people look like. And I think you could say in WWF at the time, a lot of guys look the same.
Yeah.
And there is a very international flair that WCW brings to the table. And the Cruiserweight division definitely brought that to the attention of people, but also the Japanese influence and then the Mexican influence.
Yeah.
Guys from all around the globe are being showcased in meaningful ways, not just brought as these nationality gimmicks. It's brought on and as competitors, and it feels very progressive on Eric's part. Eric, I'm talking like I know him.
Even Alex Wright. Yeah, I hated Alex Wright as a kid. I much respect though. He was the German guy. Everybody was like, "Oh yeah, Alex Wright, man!" Like he was over. It was fun. It was a cool gimmick. I mean, everybody loves a buffet, especially in 1996, man. we love buffets back then. So it was like it was just part of the flow, and that's where something that Bischoff did so right that it created history there.
So here's the infamous match that we talked about earlier today in the newsletter.
Woo!
Kevin Sullivan with Jimmy Hart versus Brian Pillman, the I Respect You strap match. So this is the infamous match that people believe is messing with the IWC into thinking they were seeing a shoot live and in action at Super Brawl. So this is a regular strap match. So no four-corner tapping in this one. The only way to win is to make your opponent say, I respect you. They fight with the strap for about a minute before Pillman pulls the mic from the ref and says, I respect you, Booker man. So there was some discrepancy at the time about the replication of this. When Turner released the home video, they cut that part out. So it wasn't on there. When you watch it here on the network, it's still there for history's sake.
Yeah.
But when this was released about, I guess, a month later, 2 months later, whenever Turner was releasing their pay-per-views, wasn't there.
Yeah.
So does that change your mind as far as, or is it just more of a deep fake on Eric's part?
I still feel shoot, man. Like even the commentators afterwards, I think it was Heenan, was like, he said it. He said, I respect you. Didn't say Booker man. And like, I was like, that's weird.
Yeah.
And then we got Arn coming out, kind of taking the place, trying to fill some time there, where they beat the shit out of each other. And then Flair comes out, and it just ends in a no contest. It was the stupidest angle, except for the Pillman part. The Pillman part was the most interesting thing.
Yeah, so after dropping that on the crowd, Pillman slides out of the ring and walks backstage, leaving everybody confused. As you mentioned, Arn Anderson heads out in street clothes.
Golf clothes.
He looks like he was dressed like Pat Patterson. It looked like they were identical. Sullivan slaps Arn Anderson with the whip, so Arn takes off his shirt for an impromptu match. We see the usual strap match between being hogtied, hung over the top rope. Nobody says they respect the other person, so Jimmy Hart runs to the back and grabs Flair after about 3 more minutes. He puts a stop to the fight. It reminds them that the 4 Horsemen of the Dungeon of Doom are much bigger goal of getting rid of Hogan and Savage. We see Flair getting crazy just for fun. Sullivan and Double A go their separate ways while Flair calls out Hogan and insults people at ringside. Yeah. So apparently, as we talked about in the newsletter over and over again, this is the point, was to not only just fool the smart marks or the smart fans, however you want to say it, but to make Pillman a free agent in the hopes that ECW would pick him up, make him hotter than ever with the loose cannon gimmick, that he can come back to WCW and make a huger impact. I guess maybe slotted. You want a fantasy book. If Eric doesn't know he's getting Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, maybe he wants the outsider gimmick for Brian Pillman. Ooh. But as we know, ECW grabs Pillman for a short time, but Pillman uses that leverage to go straight to WWF. Totally screwed Bischoff, screwed their plans up. You know what? I don't know, man. But maybe that was originally what he slotted for him, that they wanted to create competition from the inside. I
don't know, but we did skip over something very important. Mean Gene during right after the first match, Public Enemy and the Nasty Boys, he was plugging the hotline as he always does, but he said there is some news about 2 WWF stars. I think he said up north, as Mean Gene, but he said there's two stars potentially coming over that might even surprise the guys over in Connecticut. And
very, very, very interesting. I didn't put that in my notes here, but it's funny that they're addressing on television. I mean, at the time, probably not final, but just stoking the flames of reality and making people believe in kayfabe and getting them involved here.
Yeah, it matched up with the newsletter, though. I thought it was a very important piece to add to it. And it was just something like, it was just like, call the hotline, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mean Gene. And it was like, I was instantly, Nash and Hall, holy shit, they knew this far back. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, who knows what was a work and what was a shoot. And this Pillman thing kind of falls in line with all that, man. As Bischoff always likes to say, controversy creates cash. And I think this was the first bout of controversy that we kind of fell in line with. And listen, I still am calling it a shoot. I think that everybody was just kind of covering their ass saying, we had it worked out. Don't worry about it. Because, I mean, Meltzer's not always 100% accurate. He's just reporting on what he's reporting on. So
Eric Bischoff makes sure to say in 83 weeks that he believes Meltzer's full of shit. So who knows, man?
There you go. Yeah. So it's a he said, she said, he said bullshit game here, but I felt like when Flair came out and he was like dancing on the ropes, he was
They were
going,
buying
what?
time. They were
But
buying
Flair
time.
was going, what the fuck, man? What the fuck? And then they come back and he's like, Taskmaster, man, the giant 4 horse. Like once he got the microphone, he was like, I'm gonna kick butts. Let's do but he was literally going, what the fuck happened? Like you could mouth it, you could read it off of his eyes, his language. So I don't know, man. Best worked shoot ever.
Yeah, I mean,
who knows?
Unless the screw job is a work, but that's a conversation for another time. You want to take the lead on the next match here?
Yeah, absolutely. We go into the Road Warriors versus Sting and Lex Luger for the tag team titles, man. And Lex again killing time, coming out of an entrance. Just no, I don't want to get in the ring. And like the Road Warriors, I part of me was, until you said it just now, part of me was like, oh, Lex is afraid of the Road Warriors, but they were totally killing time.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, maybe the Book Man was supposed to go a little longer than it should have, or a little longer than we were anticipating, even with Arn Anderson stepping in. So who knows? I mean, this was a solid ass card. We're talking 8 big matches here, but like we're at 6, and good stuff. I thought it was really awesome. I wrote down Lex is selling the Road Warriors really well here, and I think maybe that added to the Road Warriors like lore. It was good stuff. Sting kept walking back up. They would get halfway down the ramp. Lex would turn around, be like, no, I don't want anything to do with this. And then great job on the announcers for like, oh, that's what made me believe Lex doesn't want anything to do with the Road Warriors. They just wrestled already. They don't want to have to do this again. That's for the tag titles. And I thought this was awesome, man. Anything with the Road Warriors is going to paint gold, going to paint cash, going to make money, man. And this was fun. Come on, you're talking again 4 Hall of Famers in the ring at once. Absolutely. What a rush! Yeah, it was fun, man.
It's weird to see the tag titles on the line twice and double duty for Sting and Luger here.
Yeah,
we see the Road Warriors twice in one night. Obviously, they cost Harlem Heat the match here. The one booking thing, I was waiting for Harlem Heat to come out here and cost the match for the Road Warriors. We didn't see it, so I thought that was interesting as well. But I thought this match was good. So we had all of them brawling on the floor and everyone pairing off and fighting until the ref throws the whole match out. But I thought this was a fun match. I mean, we didn't get the finish we probably wanted, but you have to keep the Road Warriors strong here. And if you want to keep the titles on Sting and Luger, first of all, you didn't have to do the match on paper. You already gave people a tag title match, but the Road Warriors can't lose in a convincing way. You just brought them in. They just got here.
Yeah, this is one of those pay-per-views where they could have trimmed the fat a little bit and made it like a 6-7 card pay-per-view, and it would have been great. But like hiccups, shit happens. But I thought the Road Warriors look super stiff, super strong here, and like you said, this is a great way to protect the team. Have them do a double count out. Nobody's getting harmed. Road Warriors still have a chance to come back and beat the shit out of them, get the titles in the future. So you never know what's going to happen. So it was fun. It was just a good time killer, basically. I thought it was a good spot in the card too. Like this was after the Book a Man thing. We got kind of some hard hitting action, calm the crowd down. Like what's going on? Okay, we're back to normality. And then you do the double count out, which wasn't not a rare thing back then. Right. So it was like, okay, yeah. I mean, rules are out the fucking window back in 1996. They're making the rules.
Yeah, and it's just funny. You watch Public Enemy and Nasty Boys go out there and do everything they want to do, and the 2 guys for the tag titles, the ref throws the match out. But whatever, I was okay with the finish. I'm not usually okay with the non-finishes, but with the Road Warriors involved, you kind of have to let those guys look strong. But I don't want the titles off of Sting and Luger yet, so I understood where they were coming from.
Yeah, they beat the shit out of them from the ring to the backstage, and then they Gene, I'm calling it right now. That was a double count out. God damn it! Like, put that cigarette out.
Put that cigarette out. So we had our next match here: the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Ric Flair with Woman defeating Randy Savage with Elizabeth. This is the first of 2 cage matches.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts before we get into the match of having 2 cage matches back to back here?
Another aspect of they could have trimmed the fat. We did not need Hogan and the Giant, even though it was a progressive storyline at the time. But real quick side note, I almost belted out in the tears hearing let's get ready to rumble. Oh man, I was like, oh my heart. I miss Michael Buffer. I miss big moment announcers for big matches. Holy shit, from North Carolina. It made me so happy. But like, yeah, going back, I don't necessarily think we needed 2 cage matches, especially the Savage and Flair one was long. I mean, Hogan and the Giant wasn't as long. It was long enough, but it was still like, and that spoiler alert, that ended in a clusterfuck, much like this one did. It was basically 2 the same cage matches, but one was a little more important than the other.
Right. So you mentioned the times. We had the Flair and the Savage match going 18 minutes and 56 seconds. Hogan Giant went 15:06, so a little bit shorter. One felt longer than the other by a lot. Like I felt like the Giant Hogan one. But this match, I thought it was good. I mean, Flair and Savage have great chemistry, as we see all throughout their history of wrestling each other. They're in the ring here. Very intense. And anytime
crazy
Macho's in the ring, crazy bumps. Like they have really good chemistry, and they feel like they feed off of each other. And then you have Elizabeth involved here. I give Macho a lot of credit as well, because Macho has the ability to work collaboratively with someone that is, his former wife, and very protective of her back in the day, but obviously didn't end well as far as their relationship goes, but able to put their differences aside to work together in a way that, had to be tough. So I give them both. They're professional people, and they went out there and they told us, they told the story. I felt like when Savage, he got the wool pulled out from under his eyes, and Elizabeth turning heel. I felt literally that, man. Yeah, exactly. So the ending saw a woman tries to throw powder in Savage's eye, but he ducks it. That didn't work. So Elizabeth hands her the high heel shoe over to Flair. Wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. Savage gets nailed, and Flair covers for the 1-2-3. Flair wins his 13th world title. Arn gets in the cage to celebrate. And of course, we have one-eyed Hogan coming down to scare everybody away with a steel chair. Man, Elizabeth's heel turn feels weird because she's such a baby face. I'm cool with it though. I
loved it. Yeah.
We see the side of her decked out in leather with the NWO, and I knew she turned heel eventually. I just thought they kind of did it overnight one time. But we see how she got there. I don't think she ever really gets back to the baby face, right? She does this sort of the rest of her run, right?
Until she joins the NWO down the line, she stays the heel the whole time.
I think so too, right?
Yeah, so it's crazy. I thought this was such a great fucking match. It was fun. Mach doing the diving forearms or the double axe handle off the top of the cage. Like, who does that shit anymore? Nobody does. Flair reverses it by punching him in the stomach. It looked like $1 million. We got Flair's ass on camera.
We did,
with Flair getting color. The only thing that looked like shit was the woman spot with the powder. Because like even the announcers like, I don't know, it looked like he got it, and they're like, oh, you didn't get it all.
We also had the premature bell ringing from the ring announcer as well.
Oh God, yeah.
Or from the timekeeper, I should say.
Yeah.
So a lot. This match didn't have the clusterfuck of an ending that the other one did, but there certainly were elements of clusterfuckery.
Showboat stealing, wheeling, dealing, Hulk Hogan. Before he was out there being a pirate with Titus O'Neil, he was out here being a pirate stealing Ric Flair's thunder now. Stealing his thunder in paradise. If you come on, like somebody can nobody have a goddamn championship win without Hogan coming down to the ring after the match and doing something,
dude? Especially since he's working the next match, you're gonna come out like, what are you doing?
Didn't need to be there. I think he ripped his shirt twice. Like, it was stupid. It was just like, come on, dude, like, put it down. Let somebody else fucking get the spotlight. Sneed would say, grow up. Come on. Yeah, grow up, man. This stupid. Grow up, man. What are you doing? All
right, so we have Hulk Hogan defeating the Giant with Kevin Sullivan and Jimmy Hart in the second cage match. Noted here, Hogan has his fist taped up. He means business. Man, not a fan of this match. It was a below average.
Giant entrance light out.
There you go. Perfect. So, if you want to compare this to other Hogan cage matches specifically in history, it's not up to snuff about what we usually see from Hogan in a cage.
Yeah.
Kevin Sullivan is there to meet him with a chair shot when he escapes the cage, and he no-sells it, so we see more no-selling. bad night for Kevin Sullivan in the office.
Booker man.
We see 8-on-1 with several dungeon members being over 300 pounds. Despite all that, Hogan still manages to fight them all off with a single chair. Here comes the Dungeon of Doom's latest acquisition, Loch Ness. He's 500 pounds of no talent, Mike Belcaster. What a wet fart to end the show with Loch Ness coming out. Why couldn't Savage and Flair end the show and have this somewhere in the middle of the card?
It would have been beautiful. Much like Loch Ness Monster, Loch Ness's talent did not exist, man. It was somewhere in a fucking lake in Scotland, and it was not here in the pay-per-view. It was bad, and like it literally turned into. I wrote the biggest bear hug ever from the Giant, the biggest big boot ever from Hulk Hogan, and the biggest clusterfuck from the pay-per-view ending. It was just the shits, man. The whole damn it stinks, brother, as a good old Taz would say, man.
Well, this sets up eventually the uncensored Triple Cage, and we'll get there. Not moving too far ahead of ourselves.
I'm excited, yeah.
Look, man. Yeah, this is messy. I mean, it's hard to book all these guys into one angle, but they tried. Yeah. And it definitely didn't work. It doesn't age well.
This was a modern day WWE finish to a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. You know, it was just like, what is going on? Why is this happening? Yeah, man. Giant looked great.
Overall, to me, there were a lot of bright spots on this pay-per-view for sure. It was fun to dive back in, but I can imagine that watching, again, we say this every week, Hogan closing the show had to make hardcore fans angry, especially with Flair and Savage having their moment. I mean, I felt sorry for Savage losing the title here. A short title reign, not too memorable. He had some defenses in there on Nitro because he did that. But, I mean, Ric Flair and Charlotte's career are very parallel, where they just take the title offer, put it back on. And Flair is the same way. At this point, 13-time champion in 1996. He finishes with 16. So not too many to go, but just, hot shot in the title on and off of Flair.
Yeah.
It feels like Flair doesn't need it here, but whatever. I mean, I love what we see to open Nitro after this, but we'll get there as well. Final thoughts on Super Brawl?
Great show. Again, a lot of fat to be trimmed from it, though. This could have easily been a 6-match pay-per-view in the allocated 3-hour time limit, just giving more room for the matches to breathe. And I felt like the matches breathed, but in a short stature. Like, it was just like this Hogan Giant match felt like it was an hour long, and it was like you said, it was 15 minutes. It was just too much going on. Granted, they had the Booker Man thing happen, which made for great storytelling. They could have easily done an AEW backstage. Like, where are you going, Brian Pillman? What's going on? You know, and I'm fucking done. Fuck the Booker Man. I respect you, Booker Man, but I'm gone. You know, it would have been great to kind of dwell into it. Hence why I just don't think they were ready for a shoot work atmosphere yet, much like we are so accustomed to these days. But overall, solid show. I didn't think it was terrible. We've seen way worse, especially in the 2001 era of WCW. So I'll give it 3.5 out of 5 Meltzers.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that assessment. I thought it was a fun watch. I had a great time. I got some food, grabbed a beer. I enjoyed watching the show, and I enjoy watching all the Nitros, but this felt like we've been really building up to the pay-per-view. I was really living the build, and I thought getting to the pay-per-view was a nice little landmark for our show, and I can't wait for the next one. I felt like a really big deal. You want to move on to the next the next night of Nitro?
I'm absolutely ready to roll. WCW Nitro, February 12th, 1996, live from Tampa, Florida.
Florida State Fair. Our current champs, Ric Flair, Conan is the U.S. champion. World Tag Champs are still Sting and Luger. Our TV champ is still Johnny B. Bad. And instead of Dusty on commentary, we got Eric Bischoff, Bobby Heenan, and of course, Mongo McMichael. Yeah. I did note that they did not show any stills of the match with Giant and Hogan aside from Hogan winning the match. I guess they even recognized.
Good point. Yeah,
the match was horrible. So
hopefully,
yeah, I don't know. So we open with a Randy Savage appearance. We get Randy Savage defeating Hugh Morris. This was the debut of his new Ragged Macho Man T-shirt. I did some research. This debuted went on sale at the WCW store the day after this week.
Wow!
And he traded the cowboy hat for a bandana. So, which is basically Hogan's look with bright colors instead of tie-dye. So I'm not sure if that rubbed Hogan the wrong way. This was a pretty decent match for, a squash, I guess. 4 minutes and 52 seconds.
Best Hugh Morris match I've ever seen.
Savage gets the win after a missed moonsault and another great elbow drop.
Yeah.
Savage wants to give him another macho elbow because he's so insanely pissed about what happened to him the night before. Nice little piece of business here to get Macho back into the psyche here. I thought this was good. We talked about Savage being portrayed in a weak way a lot of times in WCW. I thought they did a good job here with him.
Yeah, and you know what? I think as time goes on, I fell in love with Savage the most during his WCW days. I really did. Like, I loved him in his WWF, like when I was a kid. But growing into pro wrestling and growing into my teenage years, I really fell in love with Savage, and I think WCW did not do a terrible job at booking him. He just wasn't in the spotlight all the time, and understandable. They had so many people there.
Well, you guys, on the flagship mostly, people were talking about Rey Mysterio's appearances in WCW and WWE and comparing what was better. I think an interesting debate topic would be Randy Savage in WWF and also WCW, which was better booked and which do you like better? I mean, more of the iconic looks come from WCW. I think if you picture Macho Man Randy Savage, his Slim Jim type of persona, that's what most people go to. And his mainstream appearances, kind of WCW related. I don't know where I stand on it, but it would be an interesting topic for everyone to get on the Tavern to get involved in.
Yeah, and not the backtrack, but a kick in the face of nostalgia was when Macho Man was coming out at the pay-per-view, and he grabbed, it wasn't a Slim Jim, it was the Slim Jim thick, wide beef jerky that they used to sell, and I had the wife Google it right away. I was like, do they make that shit anymore? I was like, I remember eating these all the time. I fucking love these. And he was like holding it up and things, yeah, Slim Jim. And I was like, oh my God. And she's like, they went out of production in like 99. I was like, motherfucker. Like, I was so heartbroken. But I think I would totally agree. I think Savage's best stuff was in WCW, not promo wise. I think his promos were the best in WWF, but the best looks, the most memorable things was Howling Havoc, brother. Macho Man, red and yellow, wearing the Slim Jim gear, and like it's burnt into the brain. I made a Slim Jim Macho Man custom action figure before we had a chance to get like the Slim Jim Macho Man. Like,
that's one of the best figures to come out in the last 10 years. That Slim Jim figure is amazing.
It's the best, but I to agree with you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of argument there.
There's a lot of meat on the bone for the argument. Most people would just default, and I know Tom right now, if you're listening, you're probably like, no way, no how am I going to mega powers? Yeah, WWF version of Macho is much better, but I mean, the more you unpack it a little bit, if you want to talk about not historical, but like mainstream appeal, his WCW run, he became more in the maybe it was because of the boom of wrestling at the time, but he became more of a star outside of wrestling with the commercials. People started to recognize him for product placement more so than it's almost like Shaq instead of basketball. He became like he's the advertisement guy. He's the
John Madden, tough acting, acting, man.
Things like that. So definitely a debate for another time. But we have Gene Okerlund getting a word with WCW car driver Steve Grisham. I don't watch NASCAR, so I have no idea what his significance is, but pretty cool to see WCW had a car at the time. That must have been really cool for NASCAR fans to have.
Yeah, and it was a staple throughout WCW's tenure. I remember seeing the cars all the time. I have a in-box mock WCW fucking race car, and it was built off the Howling Havoc one. And it was just like, this is a cool thing to own. It was just really awesome. And they monster trucks, race cars, WCW hit that demographic really well, and they loved it, man. It was cool.
Vince had to hate that because Vince hates Southern wrestling, and nothing says more Southern. Nothing says Southern like
diesel
like
fuel.
NASCAR.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's why you got fired, damn it.
All right, so can you take the lead here on this?
Yeah, man.
The debut of Loch Ness. So
the best match of the night. Scotty Riggs, or he wasn't even Scotty yet. He was just Scott Riggs versus Loch Ness. This was a fucking this was a dark match on television. And it shouldn't even been a dark match. This should have been a house show. We didn't need this at all. I'm erasing this from my memory after tonight.
Even Jimmy Hart couldn't salvage this, man. He was like trying his best at ringside.
Daddy, lock this baby, come on. Like it's you can't put shit with shit and expect to get ice cream. Like, it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, extremely obese. And that's all you need to know. He doesn't move around well.
No, he looks like shit. Yeah.
This is a type of wrestling that's from a bygone era. And I know that we talk about WCW being an eclectic buffet.
Yeah.
But this type of stuff has no place on the card and any wrestling, in my opinion.
No, this is the sushi that's been sitting out for 18 hours and you eat it, you're like, oh no.
not a good match. Like you said, let's move past it. We'll see some more Loch Ness, but not too much of him.
My favorite part of the show, and this is literally my favorite part of the show. We get Liz and a woman coming out carrying a hospital stretcher, white blanket covering whoever's laying on it, and of course, hold on, I gotta get the chair ready. We get woo, baby! It's the new WCW World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Daddy, this is great. It was just natural, fucking Ric Flair moment. It was so good,
so good. He said he was just taking a cat nap. So, definitely an awesome segment.
Time World
Flair
Champion,
doing the crazy old man routine. He's talking about Space Mountain, grabbing ladies, whatever he's doing. But awesome segment. Nice introduction with the WCW Big Gold. That is some of the best. I mean, to me, one of the best titles in wrestling history. I love the Winged Eagle, but WCW Big Gold is awesome.
The Big Gold's got a bigger place in my heart than most titles do. It's up there. It's like Big Gold, Winged Eagle, NWA, 10 pounds of gold. Like, you don't get better than that, man.
So next match we have here is the WCW US Heavyweight Championship. Conan defeating Devin Storm. So Devin Storm went on to do nothing, and apparently through research, he was still being trained at the power plant and getting his chance on. And this is similar to guys training in the indies and getting a chance as a local talent.
Yeah,
he had the hybrid 2.0 Jack Evans and Helico gimmick before they did. It's
exactly just Jack Evans. Like him. Jack Evans does not age. This is what happened. He shaved his beard. He was look good.
But also, too, the funny part of this match, and obviously Conan gets the win here. It wasn't too memorable, 5 minutes and 20 seconds. But yeah, the type of wrestling here, they're talking about how extreme he really is. It just shows the level. Compare this to a Darby Allin match that we saw last night on Dynamite.
Yeah,
two nights ago on Wednesday night. Devin Storm was supposed to be this risk taker that's like using the steel steps and chairs. He was pretty fast, but I mean, the stuff he was doing was just like, compared to what they're doing today, not good. So
I thought it was a very underrated match. I thought it was good. It wasn't bad. It was way better. Compared to what the fuck they just followed, it stole the show so far. So I thought it was a good match to showcase the U.S. title and Conan and Dangerous Devon, my brother testify. But I thought it was good enough to be on the show. That's all I got. Yeah. It was fun.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
I said Conan looked good. Great back and forth. It was maybe my expectations were lowered by Loch Ness. I don't
possibly they eased you into it, but it's just funny. I mean, if this aired probably now, people would laugh at Devin Storm. I mean, maybe that's why Jack Evans no longer works with AEW, but it probably really resonated much better with the fans then because it wasn't happening as frequently at the time. So again, my positive took away from this is Conan's showcased in a positive way, and I think Conan continues to impress.
He looks like $1 million right now. He's jacked. He's got fucking a great presence when he gets out there, and he wrestles well. What more do you want out of a U.S. title holder from Mexico? I think it's beautiful.
So next match we have here is a pretty big deal, man. Arn Anderson with woman defeating Hulk Hogan. Arn Anderson has a podcast with Conrad Thompson. It's not really the best listen, but there is a podcast about how he has beaten Hogan not once but twice. This is the first of two defeats he has over Hulk Hogan.
Wild.
One of the notes I have here is there is a Bischoff is Satan sign right next to the guy sitting at the timekeeper's table. Hogan was no-selling everything Arn was doing.
Yes.
So it looked like it was going to be the typical Hogan match, going to just get the win over Arn. But this may just be Hogan's way in of being like, brother, I can put people over too. And Arn Anderson gets the win here. I mean, it was done in a way that was shady. Obviously, Flair gets involved and the Horsemen get involved. But in the record books, Arn Anderson, 9 minutes and 15 seconds, Arn Anderson gets the win. So after all the years of Hogan destroying everybody, all they need to do is just hit him in the eye with a high heel shoe, and he loses every week. So,
yeah, I really did enjoy the figure four spot though, where he rolled up. He had Flair rolled up, and he had Arn in the figure four.
Yeah,
that was a good looking spot. And just not to backtrack, but during that Giant match, Hogan was selling a little bit. And it was the first thing I noticed out of the match. Was like, damn, he's selling for the Giant, which I think he had to put the Giant over. But I mean, you can't. You go back into this match, and then it's just like, oh, here's Hogan again. But it wasn't terrible. I think Arn looked great. I think Hogan, despite Hogan's efforts to no sell, I think Arn handled it good. And again, that figure four spot, I would pop my ass off if I seen that today. You know, it was a fucking cool looking spot.
It's an interesting decision to have Arn Anderson getting the win here. I mean, I love it personally. I think Arn Anderson's awesome, but I don't know. Like, you think someone else would be able to get the rub? Maybe that was Hogan's mentality. Like, all right, I'll lose here, but Arn's not taking a spot on the card. So
yeah,
Hogan takes a lot of credit for putting Billy Kidman over later on in his WCW run, but I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I think it could have been better served to give it to someone else on the roster. Like, imagine Conan goes over him here. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely. It would have been awesome. But I think this is kind of also they're just sprinkling some seeds to Hogan's downfall as a babyface.
Absolutely.
And, yeah. So you're kind of getting that, and you're like, what a better way to kind of paint him as the bad guy? Was him like, not the bad guy, but like just kind of starting to get the gas turned off of him from being Hulkamania, brother, by putting him a Four Horsemen over.
They knew he was turning heel, or he knew that he was going to be turning heel to be the third man, or not yet?
Stories say no. I think not. It might not have been a full thought yet, but I think that like you see this kind of starting even a couple weeks ago, like when Hogan's coming out and raining on Macho Man's parade. Macho Man getting that awesome promo. If I win the title, you got to earn that shot. Like it was one of those kind of deals. And I think they're planting the seeds, but they don't necessarily know what's happening yet. They're just blindly throwing it out there.
Yeah. So to close the show, Randy Savage runs down to clear the ring. Okerlund gets in the ring with the Mega Powers for an interview while Flair and Arn head over to the announce table. Flair rips off Bischoff's headset and brags about destroying Hulkamania yet again. Arn says he beat Hogan once and he could do it again. That's when the Mega Powers give up on their in-ring interview and chase the Horseman and Bobby Heenan away from the announce table. Yeah. Hogan accepts the rematch with Arn, while Savage can't wait for his title rematch with Flair next week.
Hilter Skelter, brother.
We have a complete cliffhanger for the next week's Nitro, and that's what we don't get on. Even Dynamite doesn't really do it anymore.
Anything.
Make you tune in next week, and I don't know, maybe because there's so much content out there, but
yeah,
we used to see it every week. There would always be someone standing in the ring, and it was a big deal about how they ended the shows leading into pay-per-views or going into the next week of Nitro or Raw.
Yeah,
this had everything there. Now I couldn't wait to get to the next week. I really can't wait to watch next week's Nitro.
No, I'm super stoked for it. It was chaos again, right? But they ended it on a note where you were like, oh shit, we're going to get something big next week. And it felt like that. It still feels like that. Like, I'm so pumped. After we wrap up here this weekend, I'm going to enjoy my shot of nostalgia all weekend long because I'm watching Nitros, man. I'm here for it. But I thought it was awesome. And that's with the Macho Man. Helter Skelter, brother. Like I wrote it down. It stuck with me, man. Heenan looked pissed when Flair was down there. Flair broke the headset. It was just madness. Me and Gene had to come over there and save the day. It really left you like, what is going on? It's pandemonium. I love it.
So good.
Yeah.
So that brings us into our second to last segment here, The Chaser, to talk about our favorite moments of these last two. This is going to be a hard one.
Yeah.
So during this segment, it's called The Chaser. As we continue our buzz down our shot of nostalgia, every week we'll pick our favorite part of the 2 nights of WCW we watched. It's a hard one this week because we have a pay-per-view to get in here. I'll start here. I would say my favorite moment, for historical sake, I have to say it's the Brian Pillman stuff because it's littered throughout and weaved throughout history. It wasn't a match. It was more of a segment, a feeling.
It was supposed to be a match.
It's supposed to be a match. Never happened. As far as match quality goes, we got some good matches here. The tag titles highlighted as well. And, of course, you got Flair and Savage. But I'm going to stick with Pillman for sure.
You know, I was going to pick Savage and Flair in the cage, but we didn't really get super deep on this. But that Pillman match started off so fucking hot. And on a way, like, you never see somebody not put the bull rope on. You know, they were right after each other. And, you know, Pillman's beating the shit out of Taskmaster. Taskmaster coming back hot at him. And it ended so abruptly. Like, Taskmaster got like 2 moves in, and then Pillman backs up. I respect you, Booker man, and just walks off. And everybody's like, what the fuck is going on? It led to history. Yep. And I 120,000 fucking % agree with you. As you like to say, Mike Belcaster, it's here for this, man.
We need a here for it shirt. That's what we just need in the Shot Nostalgia font.
Dude, it's history. It really is. And it's the last we see Pillman in WCW. It's wild, man. It really is. And I really enjoyed the shit out of this work we've seen in the last couple episodes of this. I'm loving it, man. It's a damn shame that we had to say goodbye to him so soon. Yeah.
Honestly, you see that everything sort of has meaning. There's a lot of this fat that you could have trimmed off both these shows, but there was a lot of meaningful things. We saw Liz turn heel that we didn't mention. We have Arn Anderson getting the win over Hogan. A lot to unpack for these last 2 shows. And
Road Warriors screwing over Harlem Heat, man.
We see them on an upward trajectory to get to where they are in the summer of 1996, and I'm so excited for it. So
yeah,
let's head into closing the tab and make sure we tip our bartenders as we approach the 2-hour mark. So
damn right.
So next week's show is May 20th, 2022, and we will be talking about the Nitro from February 19th, 1996 from Salisbury, Maryland, and Nitro from February 26th, 1996 in Knoxville, Tennessee. So episode 6 will come to you about the March 11th Nitro and the March 18th Nitro, and episode 7 will be coming to you with WCW Uncensored 1996 and the March 24th Nitro from 1996. So much coming your way. Pay-per-view coming down the pike. A lot of Nitro to unpack. Again, let's get some plugs in here because we want to make sure if you guys enjoyed this, you'll enjoy the other stuff we have on our channel. Subscribe to the Turnbuckle Tavern. Hours of free content. The fucking GCW show's on hiatus, but you guys will be returning the weekend of Memorial Day for a pretty cool event. I think you have Will Ospreay returning, right? We're making his GCW debut, right?
Yeah, how can you not be excited for that? And I obviously know that the fucking GCW show is going to be a great time. And we needed a little hiatus, a little break from the madness, because when it comes back, it's going to come back stronger than all, as our metalheads of Pantera fandom would like to say. So I'm ready for it. Yeah.
Of course, we got Fig Night, where we have that awesome episode with Steve Ozer. There's some big stuff happening with Fig Night, especially as we approach some big events. Make sure you guys stay tuned for that. That's all I'll say. I'm just hinting at it.
Like it.
Well, you guys stay tuned to Fig Night. It will be a big deal. I'm promising you do not want to miss it. Of course, we got the frauds on the Raw down. We We have the AEW wrap-up show, which I was on last night. I plan on being on that way more often. I had a great time last night with the crew there.
Yeah.
And if you guys checked out Honor Society, that happened last night. We had a great episode talking about Colt Cabana possibly being full-time there. Talked about Tony Deppen, GCW legend.
Yes.
We also fantasy booked with Samoa Joe. We talked about the new trios titles potentially being in Ring of Honor exclusively. Talked about the new logo. We got a new Ring of Honor logo. So a lot of good stuff happening over there.
Crazy
Streaming
times.
schedule, you guys see it. I won't continue to look at it here. We got to add the Shot Nostalgia logo. So if the two bad Chads are listening, let's add the Shot Nostalgia logo. It's the best logo in the bunch here.
Yes.
And if you like that
hook it
logo,
up.
like that logo so much, make sure you buy the shirt with it on it. Tell everybody you love this logo, Shot Nostalgia, or buy the Tavern Daddy shirt. To me, that one is superior in every way. I love that shirt. Probably my favorite shirt on the Pro Wrestling Tee store. And of course, if you can't find what you want on the Pro Wrestling Tee store, go out to Teespring, buy some merch from there. Support the Tavern any way you can. It's not Haku, it's Ming, or go fuck yourself. So make sure you guys go out there and check it out. A lot of good stuff happening on the Tavern. I love everybody here. There's a lot of great content coming out on a daily basis. We're here for all of you. I mean, dude, we're having the time of our lives here.
You're killing it.
I appreciate that, man. You're killing it.
Nah, we're both doing good jobs here, and that's what the Tavern's about. We put our best foot forward for you guys, the listeners, the fans, the friends of the Turnbuckle Tavern. So make sure you hit that like, make sure you subscribe, put the little bell. I'm a timekeeper at heart, man. Ring that damn bell. Not prematurely, of course. Don't ruin the finish, but get it done. And like, just thank you guys for being a part of our lore here, our fun. We're at the command center 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hit us up. Join the Discord. Join everything possible at the Turnbuckle Tavern.
Call the hotline.
Call the what? My goodness! Call the Turnbuckle Tavern hotline right here. And do we have a graphic for it? I'll call the numbers out like a Miji.
I do not have it here. It's
we got to get it going.
We got to get it on here. It's on the AEW wrap-up show and also on the Honor Society. We'll make sure we get it for next week.
Yes.
Check out the Discord and check out the Instagram if you want the number. But
yeah,
guys, unfortunately, we have to get your weekend started without us now. So do your best. Make sure you guys are safe out there, and most of all, with your Shot Nostalgia, tip your bartenders, guys. We love you. See you next week.